Mark from Stag Solar with another instalment of Solar Made Simple. In this instalment we're looking at the inverter, which is an essential part of any solar PV system. There are a number of different types of inverter, for example microinverters, hybrid inverters, but we're concentrating at the moment on the most common type of inverter, the grid-tied string inverter. It's described as grid-tied because it requires a connection to the supply grid or main electricity supply to function. So what does the inverter do then? Well, if you saw the previous instalment, we discussed the fact that the electricity generated by solar panels is not compatible with that which comes from the main supply grid, and so it can't be used either to supply the loads in our property or to feed back onto the grid. So this left us with a big question mark. How do we reconcile the difference between the electricity from the solar panels and that of the supply grid? And that's where our inverter comes in. But first, let's just have a quick look at this from the last instalment. This demonstrates that electricity from solar panels only flows in one direction and is called DC, direct current. Grid electricity is known as AC, or alternating current, because as this clip shows, the voltage is continually cycling between positive and negative. It does this once every 0.02 of a second. That's 50 times per second. This no doubt will sound like a very strange process if it's something that you're not familiar with, but it all has to do with the way that most electricity is generated. Power stations and other types of generating plant mostly use some form of rotating machine to produce electricity. In this clip we have a simple generator where the shaft is driven by the primary source of energy, which could be a turbine powered by gas, water, wind and many other things. So the circular motion of the generator produces a voltage which swings between positive and negative in each cycle, as can be seen from the output. So I was trying to think of a way to illustrate this. Imagine that you're in a stationary queue of traffic and a cyclist tries to squeeze between you and the curb. You're in a car, of course, that is. Now his pedal is rotating in a circular motion, but during the second or two it takes for him to travel the length of your car, the pedal also moves forward in a linear motion. So the gouge he leaves down the side of your car would be very similar in shape to the output of our generator, and that's called a sine wave. And that's roughly how a generator produces this sine wave. It's a circular motion but spread across time. So to sum all this up, we have a solar panel or array producing DC electricity which flows in one direction, and an incoming supply where the electricity is continually alternating. And guess what? It's the inverter's job to convert solar panel DC to main grid supply AC. And that's exactly what's happening here. The inverter converts DC electricity to AC electricity extremely efficiently. And it doesn't stop there. The inverter does much more. Every day when the sun comes up and our inverter starts accepting energy input from the solar arrays, it needs to synchronize itself with the AC supply before making any electrical connection. Here we see the inverter output at the top. If it tried to connect to the incoming supply while both sources of power are not aligned with each other, a huge fault current would result, and this would be, first of all, very dangerous, and then potentially it could cause a lot of damage. So the inverter lines its output up with the input from the grid, and a connection can now be successfully established. The inverter is also responsible for power quality. What does this mean? Well, the people who manage the electricity network in the UK are called distribution network operators. Now they have a legal obligation to ensure that the quality of grid electricity is maintained in terms of voltage, frequency stability and many other parameters. So every time we install a solar PV system, we need to prove to the DNO, the district network operator, that we're going to maintain power quality. For example, we have to ensure that the voltage output at the inverter output terminals does not exceed set limits. As you can see here, the grid voltage is allowed a plus or minus 10% tolerance, and once synchronized, these limits must be maintained. Now, it's actually normal for inverters to cause a certain amount of voltage rise, but once this reaches the limit, the inverter immediately shuts down, and the same would happen if the voltage fell too low. So part of our design process ensures that each system we installed remains within these limits. And it's a similar story with frequency. Again, there are limits. Only a very tiny error is allowable here. But if the frequency at the inverter terminals either speeds up or slows down too much, the inverter immediately shuts down. So our inverter really is an incredible piece of kit. It converts DC electricity to AC, it synchronises to the grid, it maintains power quality in terms of voltage, frequency and a whole load of other parameters, and it doesn't stop there. In future videos we're going to see how the inverter allows us to monitor the performance of our solar PV installation over the internet, and how it helps us to control export limitation and self-consumption. So from me it's goodbye for now, but if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact our team of experts at Stag Solar, and remember, we're here to help you on your solar journey.